When I met James, my life took a pleasant turn. In the past, I spent my days navigating through a series of corporate crises. But when I entered James's life, I was thrown into a world of real sweetness at his family's candy store, Sweet Sanctuary. Here, love and sweets coexisted harmoniously, and before long, I was running this quaint little shop's finances. As I entered the delightfully fragrant store, James would greet me with a smile that would light up the room. "Good morning, love." His warmth served as a continual reminder of my new, joyous mission, regardless of any underlying stress. I would reply, "Morning," while I sorted through the mail, which was primarily bills, which I had gotten really good at. This month, sales have increased. Trying to keep things positive, I would say, "That new chocolate line is really taking off." James would shrug nonchalantly in response. "Yes, that is all you are doing. I am still the candy in Mom's eyes." He would jest, but underlying his easygoing manner, I could feel a hint of strain. Patricia, his mother, would suddenly enter the store, bursting with joy and encroaching on personal space. "My darling James, you've surpassed yourselves. The store looks fantastic," she would say, giving him a thump on the back. Then her gaze would turn to mine, and her smile would slightly stiffen. "I see that Karen is still playing shopkeeper." I would sigh quietly while maintaining a courteous tone. "Patricia, good morning." In order to avoid conflict, I would respond, "Yes, playing shopkeeper is keeping us in the black." Patricia would wave her hand dismissively at my remark. "Numbers, numbers." With hardly concealed contempt in her voice, she said, "You should help my son with the real business and leave that to the accountants." James would interrupt before I could reply. "Karen is doing really great, Mom. She has a business sense, which is why we're doing so well." In a subtle but powerful show of support, he had wrapped his arm around me. Patricia would dismissively sniff. "Well, I guess what matters is that my boy is happy." She would then leap away, leaving a trace of her existence in her wake. James would sheepishly squeeze my side. He would whisper, "Don't let her get to you." I would pretend to grin. "I'm not. Let's just concentrate on the store, shall we?" And we did, giving it our all to turn Sweet Sanctuary into a little piece of heaven rather than just a candy store. That feeling of utopia lasted until I started to see some alarming indicators. Deliveries increased in often, but now they included pricey devices with frightening price tags instead of confectionery components. James, another package. One night when I was closing up the register and admiring a brand new device that was still in its box, I would inquire. James would exclaim, "Oh, that's the new phone I ordered," as he opened the package with obvious delight. "At the top of the line." I would wag my brow. "We have other priorities, don't we?" That odd noise has been coming from the mixer in the rear. James would dismiss my worries while focusing on his new toy. "Don't worry, Karen. We must also take care of ourselves, you know." I wanted to complain and remind him of the delicate financial balance we were in, but I refrained in the hopes of striking a balance between taking care of ourselves and maintaining our ambition. Even though I wasn't simply worried about the phone, I remained silent. Ever the showman, Patricia frequently displayed her most recent pricey acquisitions, transforming Sweet Sanctuary into her own runway. "Karen, have a look at this gown." She would exclaim, "Isn't it just darling?" while spinning around in a pricey flowery dress that undoubtedly cost more than our daily earnings. I would respond in a measured tone, "It's nice, but shouldn't we save money to fix the sign outside?" Patricia would dismissively stroke James's face. "That's absurd. The store is doing really well." James would nod in agreement, barely half listening. "Yes, Karen, we're doing great. Don't be too anxious." However, it was precisely my problem. Every time, I did worry. Our financials, which I looked at, revealed a contrasting picture of declining earnings being eaten up by unnecessary spending. Later that week, when we discussed our financial status, I reiterated my suggestion that we exercise caution. James looked at me as though I had suggested selling the shop so I could go to the circus. A spending plan? Karen, it's not that horrible. Come on, you're being frugal, he remarked. The word stingy hurt. I was exercising caution, not being frugal. James being clever is more important than being frugal. I emphasized that we should consider Sweet Sanctuary's future, but he appeared indifferent and was already looking at another website for his next purchase. You're overly concerned, he said, half distracted. Everything will work out. When Patricia decided we needed more assistance, things became more heated. I was arranging our most recent shipment of candy jars on a Tuesday, which was our inventory day, when she entered the room, accompanied by a young female who was barely 20. This is Lisa, Karen, Patricia said with a flourish. This is Karen, my son's assistant, Lisa, my love. I stood up straight and used my apron to wipe my hands. I kindly corrected, nice to meet you, Lisa, but I'm the co-manager here. Lisa's grin was courteous yet aloof. You've been talked about a lot. I can't wait to join the team. I could see from Patricia's arrogant look that she hadn't discussed this employment with James. What precisely is Lisa going to help with? I inquired in a kind manner. Yes, she will assist with the business aspect of things. After all, you can only do so much, Patricia said, glancing dismissively at my inventory sheets. I nodded, but I felt both confused and worried. All right, I'll have to get her up to speed because we have a system here. It soon became clear that Lisa's concept of assistance involved more observation than active involvement. I was startled to learn the wage Patricia had approved for her. May we speak, James? Later at the workplace, I questioned him. He asked without raising his eyes from his computer, Sure, what's up? It has to do with Lisa. I clarified that her pay was higher than what we could afford for her position. When James did glance up, his face was concerned. It was all right, Mom remarked. She believes Lisa will contribute much. I let out a sigh, like if I were talking to a wall. The difficulties at Sweet Sanctuary were growing, and it was getting harder and harder to prevent our lovely haven from going bad. James shrugged, which is all too often his behavior these days, even though we had agreed to talk about new employment together, particularly their pay. The done is the done. His mother feels good about her, he said. I had to suppress my reaction out of frustration. We couldn't balance our accounts by depending on goodwill. While James and his mother appeared to parade through the company wearing blindfolds, I exited his office, the only one who seemed to be cognizant of the warning signs. I've always been careful, sometimes checking things 3 times, especially when it comes to numbers. I once discovered an envelope hidden in the back of a file cabinet while looking for a lost invoice. I thought it was simply another forgotten bill, but when I opened it, my heart fell. There was a single paper with Sweet Sanctuary listed as collateral, and the amount was far higher than our little business could afford. I yelled, James, and carried the papers inside his disorganized office. He looked up, and for the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of shame in his eyes. I said, What is this? Oh, that? He answered casually. It's nothing, just a small loan I took out for store improvements. Improvements to the store? I said it again incredulously. The store could be renovated 9 times with this amount. For what purpose did you really utilize it? The truth was allowed to settle uneasily between us during a tense wait. With caution, he started, Look, I may have used some of it for the house, the one I've been renovating for us. For us? Disbelief intensified my tone as I repeated. Or for your devices and other things you've been squandering money on. His chair scraped back like a judge's gavel, demanding order as he got up, but all I could feel was my fury building. Karen, it's not like that. You don't realize that everything will work out in the end. I gave a head shake. No, James. I don't understand why you took out a loan against the shop without notifying me. How could you have acted so carelessly? Patricia came in before he could respond, her face bitter as she saw the papers in my grasp. What is all of this? She insisted. I interrupted James as he began to explain, shoving the loan documents in her direction. Were you aware of this? She waved the papers away, hardly even looking at them. Naturally, I did. James is only doing the essential actions for our future. Who are you to ask him questions? After all, you are only the assistants. Although her remarks hurt, they gave me more resolve. Just the assistants. I answered in a firm, steady voice. You two have been treating the store like your personal bank account, but I've been keeping it afloat. Patricia appeared to be about to explode, and James's face became white. She started to say, "You ungrateful little," but I cut her off with unexpected composure. Not appreciating the effort someone is putting into this business is ungrateful. Risking everything for a house we don't even need is stupid. Captured in their crimes, they were unable to speak. With the papers in my hand like an awaiting verdict, I walked out of the room. Later that day, the kitchen table, which is often used for informal meals, was the scene of a serious conversation, more akin to a council of war than a conversation about a candy store. James avoided making eye contact as he cleared his throat. We must discuss the future of the store, he stated. With my hands folded on the table, I took a seat and prepared to tackle the problems we had long neglected. Patricia's manner became severe as I sat at the table and faced the hard reality of our circumstances. Karen, we must be practical. The store's earnings are insufficient to pay off the obligations. Somewhere we must find money. Her use of the pronoun "we" raised red flags since it seemed to suggest that I was the one responsible. What do you recommend? I asked, trying not to become upset. Her eyes flickered with a calculating coldness. You have that inheritance from your parents. It could clear the debts and stabilize the store. I was taken aback, feeling like I was talking to a stranger, not the mother of the man I married. You want me to use my parents' money. The money intended for my personal security. I asked incredulously. James chimed in. It's not like you're doing anything else with it. And what about our security? Patricia interjected sharply, implying that my funds should be a familial resource. I looked between them, my heart sinking. I am part of this family, but it feels like you only acknowledge that when you need something from me. James shifted uneasily. It's not like that, Karen, but we're struggling here. So you expect me to just hand over my future? I questioned, disbelief coloring my tone. Patricia leaned in, pressing her point. If you care about this family... Yes, I thought about all the long hours and sleepless nights I had spent trying to keep the store afloat. If I do this, if I use my inheritance, 1/3 of the store, I want to be an official co-owner. The room fell silent, then Patricia laughed dismissively, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. You a co-owner? Don't be ridiculous. You're not business material. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Then find another way to cover your debts because my inheritance is not your emergency fund. James' expression was unreadable, but Patricia's face flushed with anger. You let this family business fail. I've tried to save it, I said, my voice quiet but resolute. But I won't set myself on fire to keep you warm. That night, a nagging feeling pulled me back to sweet sanctuary. The shop was dark, as expected, but a faint glow from the back office suggested otherwise. I pushed the door open. The usual comforting tinkle of the bell now sounded almost ominous. The sweet scent of candy, once reassuring, now seemed thick with deception. As I neared the back, the murmurs from the office grew louder. Through the partly open door, I saw James, his arms around Lisa, the new assistant, who giggled at something he whispered. I pushed the door fully open, and they sprang apart, their faces morphing from shock to guilt in an instant. "Karen," James straightened his shirt and stuttered. "Really, it's not what it looks like." "Because it appears that I just saw my husband encircling another woman with his arms." Lisa dodged my stare as she messed with her hair. "At midnight, we were just reviewing inventory." I said icily, "With the inventory in your arms." James begged with his eyes. "Please stop making this seem so ridiculous, Karen." I laughed a little, without humor. The trust and collaboration I believed we shared were destroyed, and the icy silence that descended upon me was evident. As far as I could see, everything seemed obvious. I stopped him with a raised hand as he took a stride in my direction. "James, save it. I'm not sure which is worse, your infidelity or the weak falsehoods." At last Lisa found her voice, albeit a small one. "I apologize, Karen. I never intended for any of this to occur." I looked at her innocent, young face, caught in the web of a guy who can't take responsibility for his actions. "James, you should start looking for a job, and you should be sorry," I said. James objected immediately. "She cannot be fired for this." My resolve was unwavering. "I will and I can. I'll be getting in touch with a lawyer tomorrow." He became pale. "Please, Karen, let's talk about this." "There's nothing more to talk about," I cut in abruptly. "You must now live with the decisions you have made." I walked out of the room without waiting for his response, my head held high as his cries faded behind me. In stark contrast to the heaviness of our home, the next morning was brilliant. My phone buzzed as I sat at the kitchen table after spending the night at my apartment, a place I kept up for rent. James had left a message. Curiosity won out despite the temptation to ignore it. It was an image of a bank letter requesting prompt payment. "We need to talk. This is serious," he typed beneath it. On my way, I answered, ready to face whatever was ahead. James and Patricia were already at the confectionery, pacing anxiously when I arrived. Patricia was the first to see me, and her face darkened. As I walked in, she said, "You decided to come, didn't you?" I gave her a frown as I nodded. "You wanted to speak." James gave the letter to me. "We risk losing everything. The bank is on us hard." I read the letter again, unnerved but not surprised by the numbers. "So what are you going to do?" Patricia gave me a fierce look. "If you had simply assisted us when we asked, we wouldn't be in this mess." I turned to James and ignored her. "How are you going to proceed?" He ran a hand through his hair and seemed discouraged. "Maybe you could use your inheritance to pay for it," I said. I laughed bitterly. As I previously stated, I cannot pay this bill without having a stake in the company. Patricia moved forward. "Karen, you're acting irrationally. This company is run by a family." With forced composure, I accepted her challenge. "And when your son was misusing our money and hiring his friends for fun, where was this family?" James looked down as he opened his lips to speak, but then stopped. I went on, "You don't get to play the family card just when it's convenient. We'll have to come up with another plan." "You'll have to," James said. Patricia suddenly smiled, but it wasn't a nice one. "I'll look, but you're out if you're not contributing. Without you, we'll get along. You've been fired." I gazed at her, waiting for the stillness to subside before grinning back at her. "All right." Their surprise was nearly comical. "Like that? Is that true?" inquired James. "Absolutely," I affirmed. "I want you to know that I have carefully collected the proof. I kept a thorough record of every penny wasted and took pictures of your interactions with Lisa. You are gravely incorrect if you believe you can ignore me and put this disaster behind you." "You wouldn't dare," Patricia answered, her grin wavering. "Yes, but I would. And I'll take my well-deserved accomplishments with me when I depart. Let's see if you can convince the bank that the company is failing without its true cornerstone." It had been several months since I had entered Sweet Sanctuary. Since then, my life had fallen into a new rhythm. The lovely smell had given way to the rustle of papers, the soft hum of work, and conquering obstacles. My phone rang as I sat in my new, tidy office, a world apart from the tumultuous storeroom of the confectionery. The caller ID illuminated with Angela's name. She was a former shop coworker, and it was the only link I had to that aspect of my history. "What's new, Angela?" Knowing that updates from Sweet Sanctuary usually brought back memories, I greeted with a hint of trepidation. "Have you not heard?" Angela's voice was a mixture of discomfort and sympathy. "Last week, the store closed. It and even their home were foreclosed upon by the bank." I experienced an unexpected wave of relief. "How are things going for James and his mom?" There was a moment's silence. "Unfortunately, not well. They now reside with his aunt. They haven't been very visible." As the news hit in, I said, "Thanks for informing me, Angela." "Karen, everyone knew you were the lifeblood of that place," she said after hesitating. "After you went, things just weren't the same." My lips formed a little melancholy grin. "I appreciate you expressing that. What about you? Have you discovered anything new?" "Yes, I'm now at a downtown bakery. It's a start, but it's hardly Sweet Sanctuary." "Angela, that's wonderful to hear. You've always been good at baking, so I'm confident you'll succeed." Before hanging up, we spoke for a few more seconds. There was a knock at my door as I looked out the window at the busy street below. My assistant said, "Your 4 o'clock appointment is here." Ready to get rid of the final remnants of memories, I said, "Thanks, send them in." A pair entered with anxious expressions regarding their business. I was excited by the new challenge as I got up to welcome them. As they sat down, the wife remarked, "We've heard great things about you, Karen. They claim that you are the best crisis manager in the area." I grinned, comfortable with the recognition. "I'll do my best to fulfill that. Tell me about your company now, and we can discuss how to get things back on track." My mind was racing with solutions as they described their problems. Now this was my territory, where every issue had a solution and every obstacle presented an opportunity. A route I had created for myself, one of resiliency, atonement, and fresh starts, was ahead of me, while Sweet Sanctuary, with its bittersweet memories, lay behind. As our talk went on, their initial nervousness gave way to optimistic smiles. They left with fresh energy, and I returned to my work feeling happier than I had in a long time. At that moment, I understood that the most fulfilling successes frequently followed the most difficult obstacles, and that I had the power to influence the future, one conscious step at a time.